Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Taking over for Tony here. Give him a break. He's been teaching for a long time, does a great job, so we appreciate all that he does. So this morning, the lesson's going to come from the Sermon on the Mount. It's going to be part 7 of the Sermon on the Mount from the life of Christ. When I do these things, when I'm stepping in, I like to do a review to get my mind where it needs to be. So I'm going to do a quick review of the Sermon on the Mount up to this point. So there's going to be 6 parts prior to this. We hit some of them. Tony did. Andy hit some of them. But I'm going to have to adjust that. Okay, you did. Okay, good deal. All right, so let's do our quick review real quick. So the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 through 7. There's 2 divisions within the Sermon on the Mount if you look at it. The first half is a contrast between what the Jews had been taught and what Jesus teaches. And then the second half is going to be a contrast between the 2 ways a man can go. You have choices to make there. Transition to verse 3, you get the Beatitudes. They start with Christ. Let's turn over there and read those real quick to get our minds in the right frame for this morning. It will be applied to this lesson on giving from chapter 6. So if you'll turn over to the Beatitudes, and we'll read verses 3 through 12 of Matthew 5. You want to start us off, Leah?
Sure. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth.
Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled.
Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy.
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God.
Blessed are those which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
You are blessed when they insult you and persecute you and falsely say every kind of evil against you because of me.
Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
All right. So this is how Christ starts the Sermon on the Mount with these Beatitudes. And these are going to bring a blessing to those who follow Christ. When you follow these Beatitudes, it's going to bring you a blessing. The next verses 13 through 16, you're going to see those who follow the teachings of Christ are going to bless others. We're going to be talking about that today, blessing others through giving. But they're always going to be there, those Beatitudes, and they're going to tie in, maybe not all of them, but most of them, the lesson this morning on giving. So just keep those in the back of your mind. Christ transitions there to verses 17 through 48, which is the longest segment in the Sermon on the Mount. A few things to remember. The old law was in effect. You know, this is the law that Christ lived under. He taught his disciples to honor it. He didn't teach them to dishonor it. He taught them to honor that. He taught them, you don't object to the law, and I'm not objecting to the law, but I'm objecting to those misinterpretations of the law, which can still happen today as we go through the New Testament. So he's going to focus on that. And there's contrast within this section also, and there's going to be a lot of contrast in the Sermon on the Mount for us. So you have the contrast between the law of Moses and Jesus' teachings again, and those man-made traditions in Jesus' teaching. He's going to clarify these things. The key verse for us as we proceed, and as we proceed through all of the Sermon on the Mount, should be this verse 20. For I say to you that unless your righteousness far surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven. And that's what I want us to focus on today as we read through. And as you read through those teachings in verses 17 through 48, keep that in your mind, when you go back and look at it. When you think about that verse, what do you think about? What do you think about the righteousness of the Pharisees and the scribes? What comes to mind when you read that?
Self-righteous.
Okay. So self-righteous is one. Leaders. Yeah. And I see it both ways. I mean, you can look, and if you look at it from, maybe the point of view of a student of the law, they knew the law, right? And you can think, man, that's a lot for me to know. But that's not what Jesus is talking about, because they got it wrong. Sort of what Tony, they were self-righteous in that. We're going to talk about that today also.
They were following their traditions and not telling God.
Exactly. And Christ, he's teaching us against, what these individuals were doing wrong. And we're going to get into that lesson this morning. And it's, as you go through the New Testament, I think this is good to keep in the back of your mind. I mean, you can get things wrong. You can start traditions that are man-made and then not follow the teachings of God. All right, so real quick, verses 21 through 26 talk about murder and anger. 27 through 30, adultery and lust. 31 and 32, divorce and reason. 33 through 37, vows and integrity. 38 through 42 was retaliation and non-resistance. And then 43 through 48 was about enemies and love. And there's some, teachings in there. They're pretty tough. But overall, Christ is teaching and preaching about the attitude of our heart. That's what he's speaking to. That's what he wants us to fix. And he's going to give us the way to fix it. So when you look at verse 38 of Matthew chapter 5, and you read that and somebody slaps you on the right cheek, you turn to your left. That's tough, right? I don't understand that. It's a little hard. Why am I going to let anybody slap me and turn to them my other one? He's speaking to your heart. He's telling you your heart and protecting it from going to a bad place is more important than you retaliating for that slap. That's how important your heart is, and you have to have it in the right place. And that's what he's going to tell us today as we go through giving. But if you come to a difficult teaching, okay, there's a heart lesson here for me. What is it? Because I need to know it. And it's that important. It's going to be a difficult teaching. I need to know it for my salvation. Okay, so we get into this morning's lesson, Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. If you want to turn over there, and we'll read verses 1 through 4 of Matthew chapter 6.
Take heed that you do not your alms before men to be seen of you. Otherwise you have your reward of your Father which is in heaven.
Therefore, when you do a charitable deed, do not, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have the reward.
But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
That thine alms may be in the secret, and thine Father which seeth in secret himself shall reward thee openly.
All right. So we had chapter 5, verses 21 through 48, focusing on mortality, or morality, not mortality, which plays in there. But morality, the heart. And Matthew chapter 6 is going to look at religious forms and then worship. So this morning, these first 4 verses, our background verse was what? This here. So we're going to think about this, and as we go through, I'm going to place this in the bottom right-hand corner. Just if you forget it, it's there for us to look at. So who likes to be praised in here? Does anyone in here like to be praised? Yeah, I see a lot of heads shaking. Yes, absolutely we do. There's some studies show the effects of compliments. They're powerful. Shows they enhance learning. You perform better on task. Build self-esteem. And the writer of this, David Roper, in the life of Christ, he said it improves everything, especially when you receive those compliments at home. Right? So it's important. We do like compliments. We like them, and we act in such a way to get them. Is that not true? You see it in your work when somebody compliments you in sports. I mean, anything in life, we like to get compliments. And it can become a powerful thing. When Christ, in this verse 1, he's telling us, take care not to practice your righteousness in the sight of people to be noticed by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. Then contrast it, verse 16 of chapter 5. Our light must shine. So how do we reconcile those?
There's a difference in pride.
Okay. So pride is a big one, absolutely. I mean, pride is something that can bring us down.
The leaders of the church are to be loved respected. But these Sadducees, they believed in the law, but did not live by the law. They sometimes taught their own law. Said, I am the high priest, you do what I tell you to do. And these are the ones that had turned away from God and worshiped himself.
And in chapter 5, you know those verses, there was a reason that Christ was preaching those things. These individuals, these Jewish leaders, had warped the law so much for themselves and their benefit, and I told the class when I was teaching, we went over it a little bit, follow the money and everything, right? They found a way to become very profitable within this scheme of things. And again, it's a heart problem. You know, they can do everything by the letter of the law, but still be wrong. So it's a heart problem. So we had to hear this message. Christ had to teach this message. He's telling his apostles this message because people were misinterpreting it. And their motives were not good. And again, we go back to our verse 20, the bottom right-hand corner. It's part of it. We have to exceed this. We have to do better. We can do better. We will do better if we listen to the teachings of Christ.
Well, the information there is, what is the kingdom of heaven?
So you heard Steve there, the question, what is the kingdom of heaven? And this is a teaching that many people gets wrong. They get it wrong. They got it wrong. You know, so when we've been over this, Andy's taught about it. You know, the kingdom of heaven is what? It's the church, right? Family of God. You can look further down, you know, the true kingdom of heaven, but he's talking about the church. And if you're in the church, can you be doing wrong? Absolutely. Can you show up here at every time we meet and still be doing wrong? Do you think these Jewish leaders, these Pharisees and scribes, were not showing up for worship? Were they not trying to follow the letter of the law? But they were not doing it with the right motives. We need to pay attention. We need to pay attention close here to what he's teaching us. So again, back to the Beatitudes. How do they tie in here with this verse? Do any of them tie in with this verse? What's the first Beatitude?
About our spirit, our humble is our motivation.
So being poor in spirit, you know, individuals that are poor in spirit need to be lifted up. For you to do that in the right way, with the right heart, how does your spirit need to be? You can't be prideful, as Steve talked about, right? You have to be poor in spirit. You have to be humble. You have to be willing to do these things. And, you know, and there's more. Even, you know, blessed are those who mourn. Who's going to comfort those who mourn? The person that has their heart right with God. You're going to see that person mourning. And as I was reading about compliments and looking at different illustration stories, I came across a good one online that I'll read to you later. But a compliment's a powerful thing. We are to give compliments as much as we like to receive them. We just can't be on the receiving end of everything. Just like here in the church, people have to step forward and do the work. You can't just always be on the receiving end. You need to put the work in, the time in to give to make the church what it is. So there's lots of lessons. The Beatitudes, Christ started with them for a reason, and they're tied in here. What else with verse 1 jumps out? We've been over this a little bit. What about the first part of verse 1? What jumps out there? I think it was Tony that may have said this in one of his, because Christ uses this multiple times in the sermon. You know, take care, and there's different translations, right? He's saying pay attention. You know, this is an important thing. You have to get this right. You know, this is not just something, okay. You know, you've got beware, take heed, be careful, take care. He wants us to pay attention to this. He wanted the apostles to pay attention to this. All those that hear from the Sermon on the Mount, pay attention to this verse here and what follows after this beginning. You know, so the righteousness has to be there with us. I mean, Again, it has to be there. And where does the righteousness, the true righteousness come from? What has to be right? The heart. It has to be our heart. And again, Christ is speaking to our heart. He's trying to fix it for us when we do everything right. All right, verse 2. When you read verse 2, first thing that jumps out to me is a question. Are we expected to give based on this verse? I mean, the way he phrases that, right? So when you give, it's not saying if you give, when you give. We are required to give. If we're not giving, our heart's not right. We have to be giving, absolutely.
Giving of what?
It's a good question. So what are we to give? So we're to give to the poor, and the poor can be who?
Poor in spirit, poor in money, poor in anything.
Absolutely. We immediately, our thoughts go to money. You know, those don't have a lot, but as I read my story later, you'll see there's more to it, and you hit it right in the head there, Jerry. You know,
Need.
yeah, any type of need. You know, absolutely, absolutely. Anybody have anything else?
The basic point of all this is the love. Are we showing our love for ourselves, or our love for God, and our love for people? Love is a very powerful point in Jesus' teaching. We are to show ourselves as caring, loving people, not like the self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, the ones that are the leaders, but they don't care about anybody else.
Right, absolutely. And I think that goes back verse 16 there. You know, that's where that plays in, what you just said. And people see that, you know, through our actions. But again, it goes back to our motive. Is our motive truly out of love, or is it to prop myself up to make me look better? And again, there's a reason Christ is teaching this lesson. They were wanting themselves to look better, and it's not just them that want to look better. He's speaking to us also. He's speaking to me this morning. When you do stuff, are you doing that to make yourself look better? Because again, that compliment you get from it is powerful. And it's one of those things that you want to try to get over and over, right? You want to get that compliment. You want to do better. You want to get that good feeling that comes from that compliment. This is when he says, do not sound the trumpet before you. You think that's literal or figurative?
In that time, it was literal.
Yeah. So there was some that absolutely did this. Some of the congregations, the background reading, they had metal containers with long necks. You put your coins in, it made a noise. So, you know, people are like, oh, they're going to listen to me this time. I've got a bunch to put in. So I think that's the writer wrote, he said maybe in this different commentaries, you know, tooting your own horn, it probably comes from this right here. You know, because a lot of times we do like to do that. Our heart's not right when we do it. But it was probably both literal and figurative. You know, again, the message is what, though, from Christ? Get your heart right, have the right motives, do it for the right reasons. What does he say the reward is for those who only do it to be seen by others?
That praise you're seeking, that's it.
That's it. That's all you're getting. And how long does that praise usually last when you get it? Not very long, right? Until they see you do something wrong in the next 5 or 10 minutes, and then it's gone. Maybe it's longer, but it's short-lived. But that's all you're going to get from it, is that recognition by others. And what's the problem with it? Is there a problem with that? What's the problem with having that mindset? Again, the question, somebody slaps you on your right cheek, turn it to your left. You have to protect your heart. If you let this get in there, you start getting that mindset guess what's happening to your heart? It's getting a little bit darker. It's not going the way it needs to go. So our heart's in the wrong place when it happens. If our hearts are sympathetic and we want to give, and we see people in need, but we don't give, there's a problem there. You know, we've got our heart right. You know, I see that person in need, but I just keep going by without them helping.
Never noticed that before, but there's two different places he's talking about here. And it's a synagogue, maybe in worship, and on the streets. And that's what you're talking about right now. This is just me and no one else. I see someone in need.
And as you read some of the background and the commentaries on it, this was something that was noted in the early church. This was something that was noted in this time. In some congregations, went to the point they had a bag. They changed it, you know, from a metal container, something that made noise, to a bag where you couldn't. And then some even separated the part out where you give. You know, now we give out in the foyer. They sort of did that, not for the reasons we did, but put it, you know, where nobody could see it. Again, knowing that this was going to happen, and it does happen, and it still happens today. But what does James tell us in chapter 2, verses 14 through 16? It says, if someone says he has faith, but he has no works, can that faith save him? Can it save that person? I want to help them. I have good intentions. My heart's right, but I don't do anything. Are you actually doing anything for that individual? Does the feeling in your heart do anything for that person that's in need? You know, so there's actions to be taken within this. And again, everything's there for a learning. James had that there for a purpose. All right, anything else on chapter or verse 2 you want to add? Verses 3 and 4. And again, we're going to have a contrast again. In the book, David Roper gives a couple examples. One, you're walking down the street, you see somebody in need, you just instinctively put your hand in your pocket, toss some money in there, you keep going. The other one, you see someone in need, you stop, you know, everybody look, you know, I'm going to write a big check. Let's take a picture of it, put it on Facebook and see type deal. You know, so there's a difference there. What is the difference?
Pride.
So pride is the motive behind it, to lift yourself up instead of lifting that person up. So the motive, it's always there. We have to get ours right. Bounced a little too fast there. So are we to give to the poor? And we talked about this a little bit, and yes, we are. How do we give to the poor? What are some ways we can give to the poor? Based on this verse specifically. So with love is the main one. That way our heart's in the right place. We're supposed to do it how? In secret, which means discreetly. Do it that way. How often are we supposed to do it? Just every now and then? And it says when you give to the poor, is that a one-time deal? Is that just one instance there?
Christ said, the poor you'll have with you always. In other words, that's not going to be on this side.
Absolutely. And they're all around us. They're here in the U.S. They're here in this community. They're all over the world. And when you get this wrong, when you don't do it discreetly, quietly, often, with little discussion, you end up in the situation the U.S. is in now, right? So we have all these people that are on the receiving end of government assistance. That was the job of the church prior to that, you know. They've ended up in a bad place. People, we don't know what's going to happen when we walk out these doors, you know. We could lose the ability to work. People are in need. People need. But now people have to go in line, you know, maybe to get food or to pick up checks. In the past they did. It doesn't become so discreet for those individuals. You know, so they lose that. People see that. People judge them because of that. And it's not right. But people get used to things. And I see coming through the drugstore, we have now generations of people that are living off the government, and that's all they want to do. That's what their parents and grandparents want them to do. And it's not right. we're supposed to give and help them, but we let that slip away from us because we sort of lost our heart. Doing it right. Doing it the right way is taught here in verses 3 and 4. And now this is where we're at. Again, you leave here, you're going to pass somebody in need more than likely. If your heart's right, you're going to be thinking about that. But we get so wrapped up in ourselves, as Steve said multiple times, in our pride. You know, we walk out the door, our pride can kick in just like that. And I'm worrying about me and no one else. All right. So, is there a contradiction between these verses as Christ teaches them here? What point is he trying to make?
Do it for the right reasons.
Absolutely. You have to do it for the right reasons. You have to have the right motives and attitudes. You have to have the right heart. So what was he actually condemning in these verses that we've read? What were these Pharisees actually doing? Well, they wanted publicity, right?
For their own self, yeah.
For their own self. That was it.
They want the glory.
Yeah. You know, see how great a person I am. You know, come worship with me and give me more money too. You know, money was the driving part in this, in them, in everything, and we got to keep it in check. So Christ was, you know, it's all about the motive. Get it right.
And Chris, I think when our motives aren't right, it's never going to give us what we're looking for anyway.
Oh yeah.
In that verse 6 where it says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." That's the only way we're going to get filled, not through trying to get attention or, you know, whatever. That's never going to be enough. That's never going to fill us. Only when we hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Absolutely.
And this made me think of that too.
Yeah. And those Beatitudes, they tie in all three. And you can fit most of them within this. You know? The world is full of empty people. You know, we're looking for things to satisfy us. You know, there's a lot of empty souls out there. You go to the Sermon on the Mount, you're going to be filled. You try to live by the Sermon on the Mount, you're no longer empty. You know, your heart's going to be right. But again, it's going to take work. It's going to take practice. It's going to take repetition to do this. You know, when you receive a compliment, what is the greatest compliment you can receive as a Christian? It comes from Matthew chapter 25, verses 21 and 23. It's the same thing, both verses. Let's read the first part. It says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's it. That's the best thing that you can ever do. When you hear that, when we hear that, that's it. I mean, we're there. You know, everything's wonderful. But we should have a response when we hear that. And Paul gives that response in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 57. It says, "But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." And that's where it's going to come from. All through Christ. Who's given us this message, who's trying to fix our hearts. We can spend eternity in heaven with Him. Does God know what we give and the motive behind our giving? Absolutely. We can't hide anything. We think we can. We think we can hide our motives when we do something. Unfortunately, God knows. I say unfortunately, it's probably fortunate that He does, because He's going to try to correct us. He's going to try to get us back on the path. In the study by David Roper, might jot these down and read them. It says, "Giving with a gracious hand." About out of time. I'm not going to have time to go through all of them. But we're going to use these as the background for the following questions, and we don't have to look those up right now. We can, but when you're doing that, if you want to jot those down, I'm going to read the story that I came up with. It really hit me. I thought it was, it's a true story. You know, when it's about individuals, to me, it's twofold. An individual that needed to receive a compliment, and an individual that had the right heart to give them one. Starts off, I remember the exact date in 1991. I was 19 years old and working a crap job 500 miles from home, and I was thinking about suicide in a calm, measured way. I was on my way out of a grocery store where I'd pilfered a tube of raw cookie dough so that I could eat that day. Instinctively, as I left the store, I held the door open for the older lady behind me. She didn't say thank you. She just stopped, looked me square in the eye, and said, "You're very sweet. Follow me home. I'm going to make you dinner." So I followed her home. She cooked me dinner every night for the rest of that awful summer. Most of those nights I slept on her sofa. I went back to college in August, but we stayed pen pals until her passing in 2002. She saved my life. It was not the dinners that saved me. She couldn't cook at all, but she saved me by acknowledging me. So just a simple thing like that. Your heart being right, you can save a life. You don't know what an individual's going through. You don't know where they're at, but you can be Christ-like to everyone. And you can save lives by doing it. Just as this individual did. It doesn't say whether the individual was a Christian lady. It doesn't matter. She saved a life just by doing that right there. So as we talked earlier about some ways to give, this lady gave through her actions, through her right heart. You know, she gave through spending time with an individual that didn't feel acknowledged in life, but needed to be. So besides money, what are some ways we can give to those in need?
Time.
Time. Maybe just talk with them, right? A little personal time with them. It doesn't take much. What else?
Talent.
Talents.
If somebody needs something fixed and you have the equipment and the talent to do it.
Absolutely. And we all have talents. I know people, well, I can't do anything. Well, yeah, you have a talent. Maybe you haven't found it yet, but you have a talent. And you need to utilize that talent, you know, for the good. Not necessarily for yourself every time, which it will help with, but for the good. What else?
That acknowledgement in the story you read.
What do you say?
Be sincere about it, because that matters. You know, that's real. You know who needs encouragement? Everybody.
And people can tell when it's not sincere. You know, you can tell. But just there's simple things we can do. Again, we're required to do. To do that. It's not just, when the feeling hits. We're always, again, it goes back, and when I look at the sermon, it goes back to the heart problem. You know, getting your heart fixed. And we have to do that. We have to continually do that. What do we struggle in regards to giving? Again, first, I'll say the heart is not right. What are some other things? We struggle in regards to giving.
We feel like we don't have anything to give.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say. That's a good example. And I think about where Christ seen the widow giving like 2 portions. And somehow they seen it. He told his disciples, she's giving more than anybody here. And they seen the amount other people were giving. And they said, what? Because it's hard to understand, but she probably didn't have anything left.
Yeah.
She gave her all.
Yeah. And I've seen it, I think in the bulletin a few times, a story in the church. You know, the lady goes and, you know, she's the poorest person in the congregation and she gives. And in the end, the preacher gives it to her back and it's just the money that she had. And she was the poorest woman in the congregation. I think it's been in the bulletin a couple of times here since I've been
And her influence is still working today.
Yeah.
We reread that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we do all have something to give, but it goes back to pride. I don't have anything to give, which is saying my heart's not right, which means I'm not going to do anything because of that. And I have an excuse now for that. So we got to get over that attitude. It's out there. Get it. I can't give anything in this situation. Yeah, you can give something. You can give some time. You can give some encouragement. And everybody has that to give. Absolutely. What about not looking for those in need? Can we get our blinders on and go through life and not really be looking for those in need? I think absolutely that happens. And self-preservation, again, pride is a reason we may not be it. So what are some things we can do to overcome this mindset? Could be the mindset that the only way to give is money, or the mindset that we have nothing to give. How can we overcome that?
Prayerful mind, or God, and think about Christ, what He done for us.
And that's a big one. Both of those are big ones. We have to have a strong prayer life. Which, if your prayers are right and you're thinking about those in need, it's going to, take the blinders off, help you see those individuals. Luke 6:38. Giving is going to be given to you. And again, you can misuse this verse also. You can absolutely do that. But what Luke is saying is what Christ taught him, or what, teaching of Christ here. Your heart has to be right. You have to have the right giving heart, the right mindset, the right motive behind it. But how many of us is actually given the right heart, the right mindset? And you do receive, right? You do receive. When you give to somebody in need, how do you feel after that? Do you feel bad? Just like, yeah, I just gave them something, I feel awful. No, you don't feel that way. You feel good. Like, I actually made a difference in this life. And that don't happen for us every day. It can, and it should, but it doesn't. All right, questions, comments? About time to wrap it up.
I don't know if it may be another lesson later on, but what about giving mercy, that kind of, because we've been giving.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't show it.
It goes back to Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful. They receive what? Mercy. You're not going to receive that mercy until you give it.
We'll show the love of God through our love. Here, we're doing it because of the power of God.
And that goes back to 5:16. Right there. Let your light so shine before men. That's the way we're doing it. And people will see that. In the past, people have been blinded from that. Maybe from our own doing, maybe from some other things, but yeah. Anything else? I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.